What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you with another Atlanta Falcons video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. It is Thursday, and I want to do a quick video. The media, Falcons fans have been coming for Dan Quinn's job, saying he needs to be fired. I just want to let y'all know what Jew stands on that point, while I stand on the point as far as Dan Quinn. Just hear me out in this video, because I believe a lot of Atlanta Falcons fans I'm going to have a problem with my answer. But personally, I don't believe it's time to fire Dan Quinn. I believe that we don't need to fire him during the bye week, which is week 9, I believe, in 2 weeks. We take on the Rams, and then we have the Seahawks at home, and then we have our bye. It's been rumors out saying that Dan Quinn is going to be fired during the bye week. And I don't think that that's going to be would be a good idea. Personally, I believe that it's the media drumming this up, and Falcon fans and all of these Falcon bloggers that's drumming this up, that Dan Quinn is going to get fired. Personally, I wouldn't like to see Dan Quinn get fired. I hope that he at least keeps his job to the end of this season. Personally, I would think about keeping him. Depending on how this team pans out and whether we can start turning things around and see improvement, I would at least give Dan Quinn another year after this season. So give him next season where he can get another draft class under his belt, and we can start making changes to our defense. Because the main thing I'm noticing with this Atlanta Falcons team, I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube that I follow. I've been reading a lot of Falcon blogs. I follow the Atlanta Falcons, their actual website, atlantafalcon.com, and I read pretty much everything Atlanta Falcons and follow pretty much everything Atlanta Falcons, because that is my team. And now that I'm a new YouTuber, I always have been reading all of the different blogs and following the Atlanta Falcons, but especially now that I have my own channel, I want to give you guys the best content, and I don't want to just put out what I believe, but also I like to read and get the facts. So I watched Audible, which is Dave Archer, DJ Shockley, and The Beak. They basically have like their own little show, their own little podcast each week where they talk about the Atlanta Falcons. I also follow the AJC and watch their little videos as well, or their podcasts with Chuck Smith, who's a former Atlanta Falcons defensive lineman. So out of the things that I've been seeing, Dave Archer talked about him being around the team on a regular basis, and he talked about that he doesn't see any players holding their heads down. He don't see any players looking defeated. He doesn't see the players turning their back on the coach. He says that he doesn't feel like the players have given up on Dan Quinn, but they're actually really fighting for Dan Quinn's job because they love Dan Quinn. Because if you know Dan Quinn, he is a player's coach. And most of the players here, I've never heard any of our players have anything negative to say about Dan Quinn, or anybody in the Atlanta Falcons building in Flowery Branch. I never heard anything negative from any of our assistant coaches, or even any of our former players that were cut or no longer are with the Atlanta Falcons. Everything I hear about Dan Quinn is that he's a stand-up guy, that he's real, that, yeah, he's disappointed in how the season has started off, but he's doing everything he can to rectify the situation. So I feel like a lot of the product you see out there on the field, as much as we complain, and I've been one of the main ones complaining about the soft zone coverage that we run and the cover 3 that we run, but I've gotten enlightened by watching some of the videos from this past game of Devondre Campbell and the players that are just blowing coverages in this scheme. So they're making Dan Quinn and this scheme look worse than it really is. So I do believe that it's a mixture between Dan Quinn and the players and execution as far as what we're seeing in the product that we're seeing on the field. But as Atlanta Falcons fans, I want us to be very careful about wanting to clean house and get rid of all of our coaches, get rid of Dan Quinn, because I've talked about this before. If we fire Dan Quinn in the middle of this season, basically you're telling the players that you give up as the front office, that you don't believe that this can be turned around. You're giving up on the season, and you always want to be competitive as a franchise. What we don't want to do is change coaches like we change underwear. We're changing coaches every 3 to 4 to 5 years, because if you look at the franchises that are the laughing stocks of the NFL, the Cleveland Browns, the Detroit Lions, it's a ton of different organizations where they're changing coaches every time you turn around, and they haven't been able to establish any type of culture. They're the laughing stocks of the league. If you look at the teams that are successful, if you just look at the NFC South, the laughing stock of the NFC South has been who's been at the bottom is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're one of those teams that they're changing coaches every 3 to 4 years. They had Dirk Cutter, now they have Bruce Arians, and they're flip-flopping. They're getting rid of coaches every time you turn around, and they've been pretty much in the basement of the NFC South for the last decade. If you look at the teams that have been competitive in the NFC South, it's teams that have stability. Look at the New Orleans Saints. They've been consistent. They have had Sean Payton as their head coach for over a decade. If you look at the Carolina Panthers and Ron Rivera, I thought that he was going to lose his job last year or 2 years ago because everybody was saying he was on the hot seat, but he actually kept his job. And look at the Panthers now. They're actually back to winning games. They're winning with a backup. But the reason that these teams are winning is because they're giving these coaches a chance to establish a culture, to establish identity for their teams. We don't want to become one of those teams like the Buccaneers or like the Cleveland Browns or the Detroit Lions, the teams that are always constantly losing, the Arizona Cardinals. We don't want to be one of those teams. Arizona had their coach last year for one season and then fired him. That's a joke. And they hired Cliff Kingsbury. So we're going to see how long Cliff Kingsbury lasts. But you don't want to be one of those bottom feeder teams that, or one of those terrible franchises that you never allow whoever the coach that you hired to allow them a couple drafts to build a team, to allow them to build their culture, because it takes time to build a winning franchise. If you look at like I said, the teams that are successful, not just in the NFC South, because if you remember with the New Orleans Saints, they were 7-9, 7-9, 7-9, 3 straight seasons. And you would have thought if that would have been Atlanta, our fan base would have been the first fan base saying we need to go ahead and fire Sean Payton, or we need to fire our head coach. If you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've had a few coaches, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin's been there for over a decade, and you can't say that they've consistently won championships, or they've been consistent in making the playoffs, but they didn't make the playoffs last year, and it doesn't look like they're going to make the playoffs this year because Ben Roethlisberger's injured. But I've heard a few fans or the Steeler Nation saying that they want to get rid of Mike Tomlin. But the Rooney family that owns the Pittsburgh Steelers are a prestigious organization or franchise. If you look at the teams that constantly win within the last 10 years, the Seattle Seahawks, they've had Pete Carroll since 2010. He's been there 9 seasons, almost a decade. They haven't consistently won Super Bowls. They played in 2 Super Bowls and won one, but they haven't consistently won. They've been in the playoffs, but they haven't consistently. They lost last year in the first round in the wild card game. So as much as you want to believe that Dan Quinn needs to lose his job, I don't want us to automatically assume whoever we bring in, if we fire Dan Quinn, is going to turn this thing around, because good head coaches don't grow on trees. Good coaches don't grow on trees. So what I want all the Atlanta Falcons fans to do is take a step back and really think about it before we just say we want a new head coach in Atlanta. Think about if we'd allow Dan Quinn to stay for a couple more seasons, maybe at least one or two more seasons. Let's see if he can turn this thing around. Let's see if, because we've already paid Dan Quinn's players. We paid Deion Jones. We paid Grady Jarrett. We got Matt Ryan and Julio Jones locked up for the next couple seasons. We have Freeman under contract. So let's see if Dan Quinn can turn this defense around. Because if you think about it, all of the players that we have a problem with are going to either be free agents or we haven't given them big contracts. Like Vic Beasley. A lot of people complain about Vic Beasley. Vic Beasley is a free agent after this year. So we don't have to sign Vic Beasley. And he's one of Dan Quinn's guys. But I think one of the problems that Dan Quinn is having, and it's a problem that I also have, is when you've seen success in the past, and it was not just a little bit of success, but it was great success, it's hard to move off of a player that you've seen greatness out of, even if it was just for a single season. Because if you remember, Vic Beasley led the league in 2016, the year we went to the Super Bowl, in sacks, with 15.5 sacks. So I feel like one of the issues that Dan Quinn had with letting Vic Beasley go after this season, and the reason they franchised Vic Beasley, is because he's seen greatness. He's seen Vic Beasley lead the league in sacks with 15.5 sacks in one season. So he's believing that he can bring that Vic Beasley back to life. He don't believe that it was an admiration. He believes that Vic Beasley has greatness in him, and he wanted to see if he could pull it out of him. It's different if Vic Beasley had never done anything and he continued to play Vic Beasley, or he decided to keep Vic Beasley even though Vic Beasley hasn't done anything. But when you've seen players play great, like Vic Beasley when he led the league in sacks and he was a sacks leader, it's rare that you see those players that lead the league in sacks and then they become a bum. That's slim to none, or become a bust. So I understand, even though sometimes it might be frustrating for us, because I know with Devondre Campbell, I'm kind of ready for us to go ahead and give somebody else a try, because Devondre Campbell has been looking very suspect this season in his coverage. But I feel like some of the players that he's sticking with these players because he believes that, okay, in 2016, I got to the Super Bowl with these same guys, and he believes that some of these guys have greatness in them, and he's trying to pull the greatness out of them. But sometimes you have to move on. Sometimes it's like, that was the best that the player had. That was the best that you'll ever see out of that player. So what I do like about what Dan Quinn did is he didn't go ahead and just sign Vic Beasley off of that one season. He said, okay, I'm going to keep him for this next year and see if I can pull it out of him. So right now, it doesn't look like we're going to keep Vic Beasley next year, because Vic Beasley is not getting any sacks, and he really hasn't proven anything this year that he's worth keeping or he's worth paying big bucks. The only way I can see us keeping Vic Beasley is if we can get him at a discounted price, and they're like, okay, let's go ahead and keep him as a rotational piece. But I don't feel like it was nothing wrong with Dan Quinn keeping Vic Beasley, because he was drafted as a first rounder by Dan Quinn, and he did see that one great season out of him, and he believed that he possibly could coach him up and pull that greatness out of him again. But maybe that 1 year was an admiration. You never know. It's proven out right now that it looks like it may have been an admiration. But one thing that I would like to get all of our Falcons fans to pause is we need to see Vic Beasley with some other guys, because what I'm thinking is, like I told you, it's a mixture of the scheme that we're running, the players that we have trying to run the scheme, that doesn't look like this scheme is fitting the players. Like Isaiah Oliver doesn't look like he's fitting in that zone scheme. He looks like he would be a better press coverage corner. And then all together, like I said in my previous videos, when you're drafting a player like Isaiah Oliver, we really didn't know what we had in Isaiah Oliver. Because right now, personally, I believe that Kendall Sheffield is a better cornerback or a DB than Isaiah Oliver. But it's still early in Isaiah Oliver's development. And that's why I didn't agree with Dan Quinn throwing Isaiah Oliver to the Wolves and giving him that starting position when he had never proved himself. I felt like it should have been a competition between Kendall Sheffield, Isaiah Oliver, Jordan Miller, Brady Ray Wilson. They should have all been competing for that second corner position. Desmond Trufant had already proven in the past that he was the #1 corner. But all of those guys that we drafted, I felt like Isaiah Oliver should have had to battle those guys in the preseason to see who would actually get that spot, and he shouldn't have been given that position. But it's a lot of things that I feel like, as I was saying before, Dan Quinn has done well with this team in the past. So I feel like a big issue with this team that we're not really feeding into and we're kind of looking past is the injury to Keanu Neal. And that's the reason that Dan Quinn drafted Keanu Neal. And I feel like that was a great draft pick when he picked Keanu Neal in the first round out of Florida I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago when he was drafted in 2016, the year we went to the Super Bowl. I feel like Dan Quinn knows how to assess talent, because at the time when we drafted Keanu Neal, I felt like we were kind of reaching in that draft. I didn't like the draft pick of Keanu Neal. I kind of felt like we reached and we got him too early, because I thought he would still be in there in later rounds. But it turned out to be a good pickup, and he turned out to be that similar player to Cam Chancellor that he had in Seattle. And he was one of those box safeties that really could cover, could hit, could do everything. He's like a linebacker mixed with a safety, and he was that punisher. And I feel like we're really struggling, and he left a huge hole in our defense when he got injured. He's been injured these past 2 seasons, because if you remember the year that Cam Chancellor was with the Seattle Seahawks, and he was trying to negotiate a new contract, he sat out the first 2 games of the Seattle Seahawks season, and they end up losing the first 2 games of the season. And I believe that's because when you're running that cover three zone coverage type of defense, that safety position, that box safety, and both safeties actually, is a big position, and it can leave a huge void in your defense if you don't have that key player. And I feel like that's what we're really missing right now. We're really missing Keanu Neal in a lot of ways on this defense that we're not realizing. We're missing the guys that we let go, like I mentioned in one of my other videos. We're really missing Brian Poole and his tackling ability, and we're really missing Robert Alford and his coverage ability. Even though he would get penalties at times, he was one of those players that could intercept the ball and he could turn it into points. He could intercept the ball and take it for a pick 6. He was a legitimate athlete, and that's why I say, like, I feel like Kendall Sheffield is more of that build of more of an athletic type of player, where she has the speed, he has that quick twitch ability, a little bit better than Isaiah Oliver, where Isaiah Oliver, he needs more time to improve on his technique, because right now he's really struggling in his technique, and he's not the best athlete. He's not one of those speedy cornerbacks. He's just one of those lanky guys like a Richard Sherman. He's really lanky, and that's what Dan Quinn liked about him, is his length, not so much of how fast of an athlete he was. So, like I said, I would give Dan Quinn some time. I know everybody don't want to hear this, but this is what we got to understand. I've been hearing a lot of Falcons fans saying they want Lincoln Riley or they want an offensive-minded head coach. But I feel like this. If you clean house and you get rid of all of the coaches that we have, we're going to have at least a 1 or 2 year period where we're going to be just trying to rebuild. And if you want to, if you really want to win a Super Bowl, like all the Atlanta Falcons fan base is saying that we really want to win a Super Bowl. If that's the case and we really want to win a Super Bowl and we want to win one as soon as possible, I feel like our best bet would be keeping Dan Quinn. As much as we might not want to hear that, and I believe that would be the best move, because if we allow Dan Quinn to put his imprint on this defense, meaning allow him to draft some more players, because some of these players we've drafted didn't pan out, like Isaiah Oliver. It doesn't look like he's panning out, even though it's still early. We still need time to draft another defensive tackle to put on the other side of Grady Jarrett, because we're really missing Rashid Hageman and Courtney Upshaw, those guys that we had, Jonathan Babineau. We're really missing those guys that were on the other side of Grady Jarrett the year we went to the Super Bowl. We're missing that veteran piece, like I talked about in my other video, where we had veteran players like Dwight Freeney that was able to tutor and mentor Vic Beasley and able to mentor Tat McKinley. Because a lot of these guys, and Chuck Smith's been talking about this in the AJC on his podcast, a lot of these guys don't have pass rush moves. If you look at Vic Beasley, he's just a speed rusher, but he has no moves. Tat McKinley really doesn't have any moves. And I feel like a lot of the problem with these guys is we don't have the girth up front like we need. Like I've been talking about in the middle, I like Tyler Davison, what he's bringing to the table. I think Alan Bailey is a solid player. He's a decent player. But I feel like we need one of those real big guys like a Corey Peters that we used to have that's now playing with Arizona. He looked good in the game against the Atlanta Falcons last Sunday. I don't know if you guys were paying attention, but Corey Peters looked really good on Sunday. He was stout in the running game against us. I believe he had a sack on Matt Ryan on Sunday, and he was decent in plugging a hole. we're really missing that big space eater in the middle. So we really need to draft like a Derek Brown out of Auburn. We need to draft one of those bigger guys up front to go on the side, on the other side of Grady Jarrett, because right now Grady Jarrett is being double teamed pretty much. Any team we play, they're going to double team Grady Jarrett because they know no one else in the middle can really get home. I like what I've seen out of Jack Crawford, but he really hasn't done. I'm kind of disappointed because he hasn't done what I thought he would do. We haven't seen Deidre Sanat. I would like to see Deidre Sanat because we spent the 3rd round pick on Deidre Sanat. So I feel like we need to see what he has. It's the same thing with the whole Devondre Campbell situation. I would like to see Ofoye Oluokun get some more time at the linebacker position, or Jermaine Grace to get some of those snaps in coverage, so we can know if we do decide to keep Dan Quinn, or even if we get rid of Dan Quinn, we'll know what we need to draft. Because I feel like another problem that we have here in Atlanta right now with Dan Quinn and what he's doing, we're playing certain players and we're not playing the guys that we have on the bench. So we don't really know what we have in these other guys. And it's time for us to figure out and play these guys and figure out what we really have. Because you really can't move on from a player, or you don't know what draft picks we need, what positions we need to draft in the next draft, because we're not playing the guys that we've drafted in the past. We're playing certain guys, and we're playing guys once the position needs to be filled. Like in the case of Isaiah Oliver, we're playing him now, but that's because Robert Alford is gone. We really should have been playing him when Robert Alford was here. So I feel like the same thing with these guys, Deidre Sanat, Brian Hill. We need to give this guy some carries so we can find out what we really have. Because if you do eventually want to cut down like our salary cap, and you do want to go ahead and like let go of a Devontae Freeman or let go of a Ito Smith, you can't do that until you know what you have in Brian Hill or what you have in Quadri Olison. But I've liked what I've seen out of Devontae Freeman. He really shown that he's back from his injury. He's trying to reinvent himself. As Mad Mike has been saying in his videos, he's reinventing himself. Devontae Freeman is one of my favorite players on this team because to me, he's just an electric player. He plays the game like a child. He plays the game. He's always happy when he's on the field, and he's always running hard when he's on the field. So I think Devontae Freeman is doing his thing, but I think that we still need to keep him fresh, give some of these other guys, because one thing I don't understand, we drafted Quadri Olison we drafted Quadri Olison and we brought back Brian Hill because we needed a bigger back, because Devontae Freeman and Ito Smith are similar type backs where they both are kind of smaller. We need a power back. So I would like to see what Quadri Olison has or what Brian Hill can offer, especially in short yardage downs. Let's see what we have in those guys, because when it's time to go ahead and pay them or cut them, you're not going to really know what you have, being that we've never played them in a game situation other than preseason. We need to see what these guys can do, in a starting role or in a backup role on a 3rd down or a 3rd and short, 4th and short situation. We need to see what we have, or a goal line situation, or what we have in these guys. But as far as Dan Quinn, like I said, we need to be very careful, Falcons fans, what we wish for, because Dan Quinn has been a solid coach since he's been here. I really think that these players are struggling far as in this scheme that we're running, in this cover 3 scheme. It was a video that I seen of Devondre Campbell blowing coverage on that play where they scored with the tight end, basically leaked out from blocking and ran to the other side of the field. It was basically like on a pass back or a throw. It was an easy throw to Max Williams on the Cardinals, and Devondre Campbell just blew the coverage. He was not paying attention. He was not focused. And I've been noticing that a lot out of Devondre Campbell this year, and not just him, but some of these other players. Another thing that I don't think that we're realizing with Dan Quinn, he's taking a lot of criticism. The guys that we brought in, we've just been having a lot of problems with the injury bug. Because if you think about it, we're playing Kamal Ishmael right now, but really Kamal Ishmael is like the 3rd string safety. And that's the reason that I wanted us to bring in a George Iloka or a McDonald from the Rams, or a Deion Buchanan or Eric Berry, because if you remember in the offseason, because we had all those injuries to our safeties last year, we ended up having to play Jordan Richards and Sherrod Neesman. And then this year, in the offseason, we signed J.J. Wilcox, but he got injured. I believe he either tore his ACL or ruptured his Achilles in training camp. So he was supposed to actually be the backup for Keanu Neal because he's a hard-hitting safety as well. But he ended up getting hurt. So really, Kamal Ishmael, I can understand the drop-off because he's really the third-string safety. So if you're wondering like why we're struggling in coverage, why is the safety position where Kamal Ishmael is struggling so bad, really he was converted to a linebacker, Kamal Ishmael. But being that we had so many injuries, 2 season-ending injuries to our safeties, we had to move him back there. So I feel like we need to bring in another guy, even at this point, before the trade deadline, or we need to pick up one of these guys that's on the street, man, and give him a shot because we're really short-handed, to be honest, in as far as our safeties. And I would also like to see Sherrod Neesman get some of these snaps because last year Sherrod Neesman he can't really do any worse than Kamal Ishmael. I believe Sherrod Neesman is a little bit better in coverage than Kamal Ishmael. I just think that Kamal Ishmael is a better tackler. But as far as covering guys, and that's what we're struggling with, all of these explosive plays, I feel like Sherrod Neesman may be a better safety because he's quicker laterally than Kamal Ishmael. So I think he may be better in coverage. So like I said, pretty much all of the things that we asked Dan Quinn to do, he went out and did. In the offseason, we said that we wanted to see Matt Ryan get protected. We went out and signed 2 first-round offensive linemen. And Caleb McGarry, I don't know if you guys been watching, but Caleb McGarry has looked very good at the right tackle position. He's looked really, really good. He's getting better. With every game, he's getting better. He did a good job against Chandler Jones on Sunday, and did a decent job against Terrell Suggs on Sunday. And he's getting better and better as the year goes on. And when we had Caleb McGarry in there, Chris Lindstrom in there for the first couple games that we drafted at guard, he looked really good before he broke his foot. So Dan Quinn knows how to assess talent. I believe that this staff, they're doing the best that they can, but I feel like the main issue right now is we have so many new pieces and we're not getting a pass rush. So that's what's really hurting this secondary. This secondary is not as bad as it looks. It's looking worse because we're not getting any type of pass rush. Dan Quinn is sticking with his zone schemes instead of bringing more blitzes. In this last game, he said that he did bring more blitzes. I did like the adjustments that we made in the second half where we played more man-to-man coverage to give get more pass rush going. So I like what I saw out of the defense in the second half. I hope this game coming up we do a lot more man-to-man coverage and we try to bring some pressure because Jared Goff has really struggled with his accuracy, and I believe that Todd Gurley may not play. He didn't play last game. And they're really struggling right now. The Rams are, I believe, on a 2 or 3 game losing streak as well, where we're on a 4 game losing streak. So this game coming up, and I'm going to be doing my pregame video for the Rams tomorrow. But I really give us a shot in this next game against the Rams because they're struggling too. And if you look at a lot of these teams that are out here, all of these teams have flaws, man. Tonight, the Kansas City Chiefs will be playing the Browns on Thursday Night Football. And the Chiefs have dropped 2. They just dropped 2 home games that back to back, and they're struggling in their secondary, and they're struggling on their defensive side of the ball. So this is a problem that I'm having with our Atlanta Falcons. What you got to understand is in the NFL, every team has flaws. The way that you win in the NFL is you disguise your flaws. You try to put makeup on your flaws. You try to cover whatever your flaws are, and whoever covers their flaws the best are the teams that win. That's what makes New England great. That's what's making the Saints look good so far this season. We're playing with Teddy Bridgewater. They're playing to his strengths. And that's what I would like to see out of Dan Quinn is forget playing all of this zone. I don't feel like we should drop zone altogether, but we need to do what these players do best. So if these players feel more comfortable playing more man-to-man coverage, we need to give them that option if that's going to give us the better chance to win. But it looks like right now we're kind of experimenting with things because being that we have these backup guys playing because of injuries, especially in the secondary, because Desmond Trufant is hurt right now, so we're having to play Isaiah Oliver, Kendall Sheffield, a lot of these new guys. We're going through our growing pains. So as much as I would like to say, okay, this is all Dan Quinn's fault, if we be honest with ourselves, this is not all Dan Quinn's fault. A lot of it has to do with scheme. A lot of it has to do with execution by the players. And a lot of it has to do with growing pains. Like, we're going to have to deal with these guys. So if you're a real Falcons fan, you're going to have to sit back, watch these games as painful as it may be, cheer on your team, because at this point, I don't care who you bring in, they're not going to be able to have a quick fix. It's not going to be a quick turnaround where if we clean house with everybody, we're going to automatically win next season. And the reason I say that is because, say we do fire Dan Quinn, we fire everybody on the staff, we fire all the OC, we fire all of his special teams coaches, everybody. You could do that, and we fire the GM, bring in a whole new GM. You could do all of that. But what you're not understanding is, if you notice with Matt Ryan, every time he gets a new offensive coordinator, usually the first season he struggles. And that's just because that's with anything. And usually the other players struggle as well because they have to adjust to the system. If you remember when we had Kyle Shanahan the first year, everybody in Atlanta, the whole Atlanta Falcons fan base, was saying we need to fire Kyle Shanahan. He doesn't know what he's doing. 2015, we struggled. That was Dan Quinn's first season. We went 8-8. We started off the season 5-0 and then ended up going on a losing streak and end up being 8-8 in that season. A lot of people were saying fire Kyle Shanahan. But then the next season, because the team had a season under their belt to experiment, to learn his scheme, they had another full off-season training camp to learn the scheme and work on the scheme. They were able, the next season, 2016, we went to the Super Bowl. Matt Ryan looked great in that same system. So I feel like the same thing is going to happen if you bring in a new coach. If you bring in a totally new coach where they're going to run a whole new defensive mind, basically, it's going to take time for Deion Jones, all of these guys, Grady Jarrett, that's going to be on this team, that's been signed to these long-term contracts. It's going to be a while before these guys adjust to whoever new scheme that we're trying to run. Same thing for Matt Ryan. I really don't want to see Matt Ryan have to go through getting a whole new offensive coordinator, because if you see him and Dirk Cutter in this last game, they're starting to catch fire. If you notice in this last game, they look improved. And I believe that the offense is looking improved is because Dirk Cutter and Matt Ryan are starting to get in a groove. But the only reason I feel like they're able to do that in his first year back is because Dirk Cutter was here with Mike Smith. So Matt Ryan was already kind of familiar with what not Dan Quinn, but Dirk Cutter likes to do. So being that they were kind of familiar with each other already, now we're hitting like the mid-season point. Dirk Cutter and Matt Ryan are starting to become comfortable. The receivers are starting to become more comfortable. The running backs, and they're starting to become more comfortable in the scheme. Dirk Cutter looked really good in this last game. I like the play calling out of him in this last game. And the team looked more confident on offense. But it took 6 games for them to start feeling comfortable because we're going into our 7th game. So, like I'm telling all of the Falcons fans, just relax. It's not guaranteed that we're going to be able to turn the season around. But I believe that I did see improvement in this last game. And how I look at it, with the way that our offense scores, we could beat anybody and we can lose to anybody at this point because our defense is playing so bad. But when you have a high-power offense, you could literally outscore teams. And that's why I say I'm giving our Falcons a chance against the Rams this week, because any team is beatable. And any game is winnable. Last week, no one gave the Jets a chance to beat the Dallas Cowboys last week. And they end up winning that game. And there's been a ton of teams that's been surprising everybody. The Detroit Lions look pretty good this year. It's been a lot of teams that nobody has expected much out of, and they're doing their thing. But like I said, it takes time. So as an Atlanta Falcons fan, we all want to win a Super Bowl. Dan Quinn wants to win a Super Bowl. All of these players want to win a Super Bowl. But you have to be patient with them. Our job is to cheer on our team. Win or lose, or draw, we need to be cheering on our team. We don't need to be attacking these guys on social media. As much as I know we dislike what we're seeing out of Devondre Campbell, I would never go on social media and harass our players or troll these players, because these are our players. So we should have their back through thick and thin. And that's what a real fan does. It's nothing wrong with, I can't tell you not to criticize the players or get upset with the product that's out on the field right now, because I was upset on Sunday losing to the Cardinals. But I still was there to cheer on my team. And that's the reason I started my page, is because I want to be a positive voice. I want to be a voice of reason to our fan base to just relax. The season isn't over. It's still 10 games left. These guys are fighting hard. Last game, Matt Bryant was heartbroken after missing that extra point field goal. Trust me, this is these guys' jobs. So nobody's feeling worse than they're feeling. They're feeling the worst because this is their jobs. And if they win, they're the ones that's going to get a ring. We're not going to get a ring. They're going to be the ones that get the rings and get the banners and get the parades and things of that nature. So our job is to cheer our team on. So I hope in this next home game, because I was disappointed in our last home game to see that the fans are not even showing up to these games. They're so disappointed. A lot of fans, because they're season ticket holders, they feel that they have the right to say whatever they want to these players and treat these players any kind of way and treat the coaches any kind of way and go to the game and boo and things of that nature. If anything, we need to be cheering our team on. We need to be trying to motivate our team, not boo them. We need to be there to have their backs. I understand that you might be disappointed the way that the game is turning out, but we need to be ones cheering because the Falcons fan base, we don't get the credit we deserve, but some of that is our fault because we don't cheer our team on. We troll our own team. We talk bad about our own team. I've seen people come on my page, and I really don't care about the negative comments, but I've seen people already come on my page and say, like, this season's over. We have no shot at the playoffs. We have no shot at this. We have no shot at that. But one thing you got to realize is there's still 10 games left. So I refuse to be one of those guys that look at the cup half empty and talk negative about my team. I'm going to continue to cheer for these guys, even if they lose games. If they don't win another game this season, I'm going to still be doing my videos. I'm going to still be cheering these guys on because we look terrible as a fan base when it's other teams coming to our building and they have more of their fans coming to our games in our home stadium, beating us. We can hear them cheering for their team louder than us. Even when our team is winning, these other fan bases come to our stadium and they cheer on their team, and you can hear them louder than our fans. And it's supposed to be our house. It's supposed to be us supporting our team. But we have no type of home field advantage right now. Every time I turn on the TV and watch the game, it seems like the visitors are the home team. They're getting cheered on more than our guys are getting cheered on. We're out there booing our team, and they're out there rooting their team on. Even if we're beating their team, I can hear their fan base out there cheering their team on. They're traveling from miles and miles around to cheer on their team, but we refuse to cheer on our team. Even though we're 1-5, one thing I can say about the teams, some of these fan bases, like the Buffalo Bills, the Bills Mafia, and some of these guys, the Dallas Cowboys, even though they're on a 3-game losing streak, I rarely hear a Cowboys fan talk bad about the Dallas Cowboys. But with the Atlanta Falcons, we can have one bad game or 2 bad games, and we're like all over these players. We're ready to fire everybody. Everybody on the team sucks. Like, let's be real. Like, let's be real fans and cheer on these guys. As much as we might be upset about the outcome of these games and things of that nature, we need to be the ones cheering on our guys, especially during our home games. That says a lot. We should be able to have the crowd noise on our side. On third downs, we need to get up. We need to cheer. We need to try to cause an offsides or encroachment on the deep. We need to do whatever we can to support these players. We need to try to motivate these players. Because trust me, on Sunday, these guys are going to come to play. And I'm telling you right now, these guys are motivated than ever to win a Super Bowl. Matt Ryan wants to win a Super Bowl. Julio Jones wants to win a Super Bowl. As much as we want them to win, they want to win. And like I was saying, man, let's do our best to cheer these guys on, man. Like I said, before we say let's fire Dan Quinn, let's really think long and hard about this thing. Let's really think who's out there that we could actually hire that can do a better job than Dan Quinn is doing right now. Because, like I've said, we've already invested in Dan Quinn's players. We already have invested all of this time, this money into these guys. So we might as well see what we can do with these guys. So I would say let's give Dan Quinn at least to the rest of this season, see if he can if these guys can improve. If we see improvement, let's see if Dan Quinn can go out and make the proper adjustments to sign some new guys. Because maybe we can let go of Vic Beasley if he doesn't pan out the rest of this season, and we can go get somebody in free agency. Or maybe we can draft a top defensive end. Because we done switched our defense to the 3-4, so let's go out and draft the proper players to play the 3-4. Maybe after this year we'll let Devondre Campbell walk, and we can go and draft another linebacker to play alongside of Deion Jones. Because I believe paying Deion Jones, paying Grady Jarrett, those were the right the right decisions, because those guys had outperformed their contract and they proved that they're great players. Keanu Neal, hopefully, preferably, he can come back healthy, because he's a huge part of this defense. And I'm telling y'all, if Keanu Neal was out here, this defense would look a lot better. Because when he was out here playing, this defense was looking a lot better. So like I said, man, let's just cheer these guys on, man. I really think that we can get this ship turned around. We can right the ship. Even if, like I said, we don't make the playoffs. Hopefully we can turn this thing around, because I've been hearing some of the fans talking about tanking. And tanking, to me, is the worst thing you can do. Because sometimes when you tank and you think, okay, well, we can tank and then we can bring in players. Like I was saying before, just because you have high draft picks don't mean that you're going to pick the right players. And not just you may not pick the right players, it doesn't mean these guys are going to pan out and be great players right away. It may take time for these guys to develop. Like I talked about Isaiah Oliver. And that's the reason I said we should give Dan Quinn more time, because this, like I said before, the successful teams in this league, the successful franchises, are the franchises that keep their head coaches around, especially if their head coaches are decent and they give them time to develop their players. They give them multiple drafts to try to draft the players they need if they've made mistakes in drafting other guys. And those are the successful franchises. The teams that switch coaches every 3 to 4 to 5 years are the teams that suck. And it's been proven. You can look around the league. I gave you some examples. The Cleveland Browns, the Detroit Lions, the laughingstocks of the NFL, the Arizona Cardinals, the Oakland Raiders for a lot of seasons. Now they have John Gruden back, and look how well they're looking right now. But for years and years and years, for like the last 10 years, the Raiders were a laughingstock. Like, they weren't winning consistently because they were changing their coaches. At one point, they were changing their coaches like every other year. They had Jack Del Rio at one point. I believe they had Hugh Jackson on their coaching staff at one point. They had so many different guys that they gave that position to, and they were a laughingstock. But now they're back to winning, even with them letting go of their star players, Amari Cooper, letting go Khalil Mack. John Gruden is building a culture there, and they're back to winning football. I believe they're 3-2 right now, and John Gruden is not looking as bad as he was looking. Because to be honest, I was one of those guys that was judging John Gruden and saying, how can you let go of Khalil Mack, and how can you let go of Amari Cooper? But he must know what he's doing, because they're winning some games. So sometimes a coach, when he comes in and clean house, maybe he knows what type of team and what type of players he wants on his team, because he's built that offensive line back up. They're a physical team. They have an identity. They're running the ball very well. They got that kid Jacobs out of Alabama, and they're looking pretty solid, man. So it's like John Gruden knows what he's doing out there, and they gave him a 10-year contract, because they know that it takes time to build a culture. And it looks like John Gruden is bringing the silver and black back. Like, he's building a culture out there. That's what we need to do with Dan Quinn. We need to support Dan Quinn, not be a laughingstock organization, man. Well, every year or every 3 to 5 years, we're like, all right, let's fire this guy, let's move on before we give these guys a chance. Because to be honest, Dan Quinn has only had one losing season, and that was last year when we were 7-9. All of the other seasons, we've been above water. We've at least been 8-8, and this is only Dan Quinn's 5th season. So I believe that Dan Quinn at least deserves 6 to 7 years, at least 1 to 2 more years, to try to build this defense, to try to develop these guys, to see if Isaiah Oliver can actually mature and develop, to see if Kendall Sheffield can develop into a shutdown corner, or at least a solid corner. So let's give these guys a chance. Let's give Dan Quinn a chance to work on building his scheme, work on getting the proper players in here to run his scheme, before we're so quick to just cut bait. Because, like I said, cutting bait is not always the answer, and we might regret what we're asking for. So let's really think about this, Atlanta Falcons fans. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Like I said, man, I appreciate every subscriber that I have. I thank y'all for supporting my page. If you would like to donate to my channel, you can go to the Cash App. It'll be the $ Jew Talk Sports. But I appreciate all the new subscribers. Welcome to the family. Everybody that's tell your friends about this page, Atlanta Falcons fans. I have all of the content that you want and need, all of the best content. Like I said, I'm always going to bring you the most positive content I can. I'm always going to root for my team, whether we're 0-16 or whether we're 11-5, 16-0. I'm always going to root for our team. I'm always going to look at the cup half full instead of half empty. So if you like positive content, definitely subscribe to this page. Hit the like button. Like I said, I want to hear what you guys fill in the comments about Dan Quinn. What you feel about what I said in this video. Like I said, the goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season. So I can start doing live videos where I can chat back and forth with you guys. And y'all could be in here while I'm talking live, telling me what you think. I could answer some of your questions. Like I said, I've been an Atlanta Falcons fan for going on pretty much almost 20 years now. So y'all tell me what y'all think, man. But I feel like we're doing big things, man. The Atlanta Falcons got a chance to turn this thing around. We're an excellent organization. I feel like Arthur Blank is an excellent owner, and he's doing the right thing by not just pulling the trigger off emotion, off of a couple losses or a losing streak. I don't feel like you should pull, go ahead and cut bait just after a losing streak, because every single franchise, like I say, has went through it. Even the great head coaches have went through losing streaks and losing seasons. So let's get behind our guys, man. Forget what the media is talking about. Forget what ESPN and all these networks are talking about, because we're one of the smallest fan bases. They don't care about our fan base. They don't respect the Falcons when we're doing well. They rarely talk about us. They only talk about us they only kick us when we're down. So let's all stick together. Like I said, rise up. I have a video for y'all tomorrow talking about the Rams versus the Atlanta Falcons. As always, the brotherhood. Y'all have a great night. It's Wednesday. Well, actually, it's Thursday. So tomorrow's Friday. The weekend is almost here. But I'll be back with y'all tomorrow to give y'all some more content. Do my pregame show about the Rams and this home game. Let's support our team, man. As always, this is your boy Jew. I'm out. Peace and love. Peace.